Hey, how's it going? Today, I am talking about the phases of a running journey and how to use each of those phases to run if you're an injury-prone runner or recovering from an injury. This is Running to the Castle, a podcast for injury-prone Run Disney runners on a journey to running magical miles. Join me, Dr. Allie, as I share the secrets I've gathered as a runner, doctor of physical therapy, and coach. You'll learn the exact ways I get my clients to the castle strong without feeling broken or held together with KT tape as they cross the finish line. Okay, so I posted in Instagram a couple of weeks ago my little Canva made, looks like Minnie Mouse, phases of a running journey. And this is important because in order to run as an injury-prone runner or heal from an injury or prevent another injury from happening when you are running, it's important to know what phase of the running journey you are in. And there's no real start and end, and it's not necessarily sequential, so meaning you don't have to go in order. Of course, yes, it would be ideal if you went in order. However, there are some instances where you might skip a phase, and I will talk about that for a minute toward the end. But let's talk about the 5 phases of a running journey that an injury-prone runner needs to know about. Okay, so we have the rest and recovery phase. This is the time immediately after your race, and this phase can last a few days or a few months. Okay, especially if you're injured, it could last a few months. The next phase is the build phase. This is the time after you've recovered from your last race, and you still have a few months before you start training for your next race. The next phase is the train phase. This is the time when you're training for a specific race with a specific training plan. Typically, this phase is 12 plus weeks, could be somewhere around 9 months if you're doing dopey. The next phase is the taper phase. This is the time when you're decreasing mileage leading up to race day. It's the last part of the train phase. It starts with your peak training week and lasts anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. Finally, you have the race phase. This is race day or race weekend if you're doing a challenge. Okay, so typically you're going to go through all 5 of these phases to successfully train for your Run Disney race. Now, there are instances where you're going to skip around a little bit, and this comes if you're doing multiple races. So let's say you're doing Wine and Dine, Marathon Weekend, and Princess Half Marathon Weekend. So you could be training for Wine and Dine starting in, let's say, July. Let's say you're doing like a 8 to 12 week plan, somewhere in there for the Wine and Dine 2-course challenge. So you're training from July, starting sometime in July, right? And actually I should look at a calendar to make sure these timelines are correct. So you could be training, just for conversation's sake, we're going to talk about starting in July. Training in July, and then the taper for Wine and Dine is going to start about 3 weeks before. And it could be 2 weeks before. If you're doing the challenge, I do not recommend only a 1-week taper. It's 2 to 3 weeks. Ideally, it's 3 weeks. Then Wine and Dine day comes, and it's race day. It's race weekend. So now you're in race phase. Then, right after Wine and Dine, you have rest and recovery. And so that's going to last 1 to 2 weeks typically, because in this scenario, you're also running marathon weekend. And let's say you're just doing the half marathon, quote unquote, just. It's no small feat. But when people talk about doing dopey or the 2-course challenge and then they're only doing one other race, I hear people say just all the time. Don't take that to mean that I think that is no big deal. It's a big deal. Doing any of these races is a big deal. So anyway, getting back to this, phases of a running journey. So you are in the rest and recovery phase for right after wine and dine. Because you are training for another race again, you're actually going to skip the build phase. And you're going to go straight into the train phase. Okay, so you skip the build phase. Then you're going to train, go into the taper during peak week. And again, for at least a half marathon, it's 2 to 3 weeks. Then marathon weekend comes and you're in race phase. Then for the 1 to 2 weeks after, you're in rest and recovery again, because you're going to be training for, you're going to be in rest and recovery because you just did a race. You're going to skip build phase again because you're going to jump right back into training for Princess Half Marathon Weekend. Okay, so you train for Princess Half Marathon Weekend. You're doing the Fairy Tale Challenge, so you are tapering at the 3-week mark, 2 to 3 week mark. And then you're in race phase because we are at Princess Half Marathon Weekend. Then you're in rest and recovery. That's going to be, let's just call it 2 weeks. It could be more. It all depends on, did you get injured during the race? Were you injured during training? You may need to be taking longer. I had a client who did Dopey 2024. She had rest and recovery for 2 weeks, kind of to her chagrin, because that's what I wrote in her training plan, and she was ready to go for Princess training after a week off. And I said, nope, just ease back into it. We have plenty of time for Princess. So for her, the rest and recovery was 2 weeks, and then she did Princess. Again, same thing, wanted to jump right back into it, rest and recover for 2 weeks, because when you've had an injury, and she had knee problems, and she was all taped up for Dopey 2023, when you've had problems, shin splints, knee pain, Achilles problems, stress fracture, give your body some time to rest and recover in between. Okay, so getting back to this example, now racing season, Run Disney season is over for you. So after your rest and recovery, you're actually going to do the build phase of this running phase. And in the build phase, that's going to be anywhere from 8 weeks to 4 months, could be longer. And this is the time where you use the time you have to build strength. So you've probably heard so many people say that the way to prevent injury and heal from your injury is be stronger. You need stronger knees to avoid knee pain. You need stronger ankles to avoid ankle sprains. You need, all sorts of different strength things, strong hips to avoid knee problems, IT band problems. What they don't tell you is when you're training, focusing on strength training is the wrong time to focus on that strength training. Don't get me wrong, you should still be strength training. It's just a different amount. When you're in the build phase, that's your main priority. Okay, the build phase, the main priority is building strength. So you'll maintain mileage, and depending on what your race distance is, that mileage, long run mileage is what I'm talking about. That mileage that you're maintaining is anywhere between 4 and 6 miles, because from a 4-mile standpoint, you can hop into any training plan. Actually, all of my training plans, with the exception of a 5K training plan, assumes you can run a 5K. So keeping and maintaining a 4-mile distance automatically means that you can hop into any one of my training plans appropriately for whatever runDisney race you're doing next. So use the build phase to build up that muscle. And that's where your focus is going to be: gaining strength, being able to lift heavier. You're running shorter distances overall and really focusing in, okay, here's my strength workout, eating my protein to gain strength and build muscle. And that's what happens in the build phase. Because each phase of the running journey has a different priority. The build phase is building strength. The train phase is gaining endurance, adding miles, training your body cardiovascularly for this race distance that you're doing. Taper is the priority is pulling back on mileage to gain energy, to hold on to energy so that you have it for race day. Race day, priority is race day. You're racing. Rest and recovery priority is resting and recovering from race day and from all that training you just did over the past 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, 12 months. Because if you've been going, and training race after race after race, you could be training for 12 months, different races. But now your body needs to rest and recover from that. So each phase has a different priority. So knowing where you are in the running journey will help you manage your injury so that you know that you can race without getting hurt worse, without getting swept, without feeling like you're going to fall apart crossing the finish line. We don't want any of that, obviously, right? But if you don't know what phase of the running journey you're in, you don't know what your priority is, and so you can have a mismatch in what you're doing to handle that injury. Like I said, the most common one is doing strength exercises and that being the priority to heal an injury in the wrong phase of the running journey. Strength building, that priority only happens during the build phase. Again, that doesn't mean you're not doing strength exercises while you're training. It's just not the priority. So you do different amounts, you lift different amounts, you do it in a different order completely. Because in training, I have my clients train first. So they run, cross-train, walk. And if they're also doing their strength exercises, which I actually recommend that they do on those workout days, they're doing their strength training workouts after they run. But in the build phase, I usually have you flip-flop that. I have my clients flip that because whichever one's the priority, you do first because that's going to use up a lot of your energy. So you want to make sure you prioritize the energy. So you're doing your strength workout first and then you go for your maintenance run. Okay, so that is talking about the different phases of a running journey and why it's important to know. It's important to know so you can prioritize what you're doing and how you're handling an injury that has occurred or preventing a current injury from getting worse or preventing a new injury from happening. As always, thanks so much for listening. If you have a question, send me a DM. You can find me on Instagram, runDisneyDPT. That's all for now. Talk to you soon.